Iranian security agents and team officials have just realised 5 of their players are gone.
They were trying to escape through the car park downstairs.
They run down the fire escape hoping to intercept them.
Because the elevator down to the garage takes too long, so the staircase is a better option.
Player supporters Tina and Lee give chase, running interference.
You're in Australia, you better run!
And hurling insults.
Out of our country, IRGC.
What I saw, the coach, the translator and a few other members of their security desperately trying to get to the car park themselves. They were even banging on the door.
He goes down to try to get down into the garage, and the door is locked. So whether that was locked intentionally, it's a fire escape. The door should be open.
After hitting a dead end, the group runs back up, Lee and Tina on their tails.
Looks like a couple of players were trying to get out and they found out about it.
Upstairs in the lobby, the reality of the situation sets in.
And that's when you could see the distress. He looked like a man who had failed his job.
Very distraught. And, I think they were even yelling at one point.
They came in and out of the hotel, back into the lobby. There was chaos with them trying to figure out what to do.
It was during this chaotic time that the girls were able to leave the hotel.
I can bring you a further update on the Iran women. As we know, there's been incredible news overnight. Last night, 5 women left the team hotel. They were escorted by AFP officials and they have been given humanitarian visas in Australia. The Home Affairs Minister, Tony Burke, has just given an update to the media. One thing that seems apparent, and it doesn't seem that he or many people are aware of, is that there are 3 other team members who are not at the team hotel. Their whereabouts are unknown. Now, the update that I have, Mehdi Taj, who is the president of the Iranian Football Federation, a former commander of the IRGC, the Islamic Revolutionary Guards, who are banned as a terrorist organisation in Australia, he tried to come here to make sure every member of that team got back to Iran. He was not given a visa by the Australian government. So coming in his place to do that job was his deputy, Farideh Shojai. Now, she's the Vice President of Women's Football in Iran. She has arrived here. She's done an interview with the Iranian Press Association and has told them that the pressure has been applied to their families to guarantee that all remaining players and officials with the team return home. Later on, there was a spokesperson for the team who gave an interview to the same agency, and he said that the pressure is not going to be released until their family members return. So there's a lot of pressure being applied to those remaining team members. But remember, there are 3 that are still missing, so 8 in total. 5 who've been given humanitarian visas here in Australia, and another 3 whose location we are still unsure of. Now, I want to give a shout out here to Raha Porbaksh, who works for Iran International TV in London. She has been incredible. She's been in touch with a number of the women, including some of those that are still missing, whose whereabouts is unknown by people here in Australia. Now, at home, the escape is being described as the enemy causing marginal issues, and there is a reference there to Trump. The propaganda continues around this story. Now, at about 5:30 Sydney time this morning, that's Tuesday, the team spokesman repeated the same lines again about the pressure being sustained against the families of those members that are still here and are now able to make a decision whether they want to stay or not, because the Australian government will give humanitarian visas to any of those team members who want them. I should mention there's also pressure here. This is, again, care of Raha Porbaksh, pressure here on the coach Mazia Jafari, because 3 of those team members who have got humanitarian visas have come from her team that she coaches, the league team she coaches in Iran. One of the others was a former member until this year. So 4 of them under her watch, and a lot of pressure surely will be on her shoulders. I'll keep you updated. Please follow the Sports Ambassador on Substack to stay across everything that's happening, because it's moving fast.
So you guys may have not heard about this story, or you may have forgotten about it, but it was a big story. And the woman that you saw talking, Tracy Holmes from the Sports Ambassador, she's right here with an interview, is going to give us the update. That was like the initial story. This thing has continued to morph into something bigger. I'm not going to tell you what's going on. I'll let Tracy tell you herself. Tracy, how are you tonight?
I'm very good, Barry. Thanks for having me.
So that was one of the first videos that you had posted, and I understand from looking at some of the stuff on your page, a lot more has happened since then. What is actually going on? What's the state of the situation where these women are?
Well, it feels like there was so much that has happened between then and now, like many, many different chapters in this story. What we have at the moment is that only 2 remained in Australia. So there are currently 2 Iranian women's footballers who stayed in Brisbane, in Queensland, and they're currently training with one of the local domestic teams here. 5 others went home. They succumbed to pressure, we believe, to go back to Iran. But the interesting part of this story is that the saga first began because the women, after the war started, they played their first game about 48 hours later. And during that first game, they refused to sing the national anthem. So at home in Iran, they were labelled as traitors. Now, the women's football team in Iran gets almost zero coverage. Nobody could even identify most of their faces. So it was really unusual to see that suddenly they were on the screens, front and centre in Iran, being described as wartime traitors for not singing the national anthem. So right then, pressure started to be applied from home. The next time they played, they did sing the national anthem. They also saluted the flag. So it was seen as a complete about-face. People knew pressure was being applied. Originally, there were 5 members that sought asylum in Australia. They were taken to a safe house. 2 others, including an official of the team, who was described here as a logistics expert of the team, she came with another young player and said they would like asylum. They came into the group, and suddenly half of the group, more than half of the group, said, we don't want to stay here, we want to go back. So we believe that's where the pressure was applied. Since they've gone home, they've been celebrated on national television as absolute heroes for choosing their homeland either over Australia or America, because we know that US President Donald Trump had some sort of a conversation with our own Prime Minister about the future of these women. So they're being used as political pawns, and the story's not finished yet. We need to follow what happens with these women back there. But can I just say thank you to you and anybody else who has covered this story, because it's only because of the attention on them that these women have not gone home and been punished as traitors, but it's flipped, and they're being turned into national heroes. It's a complicated story.
Did anybody give you any idea, including possibly the women that stayed, what exactly kind of pressure were they talking about? Were their lives in danger? Were their families' lives in danger? What is the pressure they would exact on these women?
It appears that it was pressure applied via the families at home. So in other words, videos played to these women while they were in the safe house saying, this is your mother, father, brother, sister, whoever it may have been, and you better go home. Otherwise, this pressure is going to be maintained for them. Now, this is standard practice, we believe. We've heard this from other athletes, other men and women who no longer live in Iran but have experienced this. And not only that, but, you know, there are more than 200 athletes that were murdered by the Islamic Revolutionary Guards during the protests earlier this year. And there's another 80 plus that remain in prison at the moment, and we don't know what state they're in.
Wow. Are the women who stayed under protection, are they in danger right now? I mean, I can imagine that they've seen some of their teammates go back, but yet they're still here. What kind of lives can they expect in the very near future?
Look, I think it's going to be very difficult, as you can imagine. If you give up your country and you decide to stay in another country that speaks another language, that's got a very different culture, it was their decision, but that doesn't make it easy. So, there's this removal. It's very difficult. There's only 2 of them, but there's a strong Iranian expat community here in Australia, and they have kind of wrapped their arms around them. They are under limited protection, so they have the freedom to go and train with the football club closest to where they are being housed. They'll be given assistance. They'll be able to do language programs if they need to. So there's all of that that's kind of wrapped around them, but that's not to say it's not going to be incredibly difficult as they think about, all of their teammates and their friendships that they have known are now all back there and they're removed from that.
Why do you think the United States press, both the normal mainstream press and the sports press, kind of just looked the other way on this? Why did they ignore it for the most part?
Oh, look, I think there were, so many other elements that were taking place because the war had started and everything was kind of thrown up in the air. And also this was a regional tournament that was being staged in Australia, which is why they were here. It was an Asian Football Confederation. So it's probably not that sort of global picture. If it was a World Cup, it would be something different. But because it was sort of limited to Asia, the story may have got lost. But I do know that many of the big organisations, around the world, some of the big media organisations did do some coverage at least, and this has helped guarantee, for the time being, the safety of the women who've gone home.
Now, how do we know that they're now safe at home? Is there any communication period between the players that went home and the players that are here, or with anybody, whether it be in Australia or the United States? How do we know what's going on with the other women that went back?
I actually know 2 people that live outside of Iran, not in the US and not in Australia. They live elsewhere and they have been in touch with them. But also we're seeing a lot of stuff coming out of Iran media. So this is state-affiliated media, propaganda media, if you like, and they're doing lots of interviews with the women. They're filming them. They've given them, floral garlands when they got home. They had a massive celebration, which would never happen otherwise. But also interviews that are being done where these women are saying things like they were pressured by the Australian government to stay here and give up their homeland. We know that Australia doesn't need to pressure people that want to live here. People come of their own free will. So there's a lot of that's happening at the moment.
And we saw, if people haven't, the video is out there where they're running down the stairwell and they're being chased. And so you have to wonder, this wasn't spontaneous. It had to have some sort of planning associated with it. Has there been anything discovered by you in your reporting as to how it came about?
No, but look, I do have a sense that some of them may have considered asking for asylum before they even came here. So I did a podcast about a week or 2 weeks maybe before the team was due to arrive, because we still didn't have confirmation that they were actually going to be let out of Iran to come and compete. So the Iranian women are not able very often to leave their country to compete in international tournaments. So it was only about 2 or 3 days before they arrived that we heard they did have their visas. The Australian government issued visas quite early on, but the officials in Iran had decided, yes, they can come and compete in the tournament. So it was a very quick turnaround between them actually finding out, arriving here. 48 hours later, the war begins. 48 hours after that, they play their first match. So it was a real hotbed of information, but there's always a possibility when teams like this travel to countries like yours and mine, where they might want to claim asylum, some of them, for various reasons.
So if you were to estimate, what is Iran going to do? I don't know if they've even been invited to the World Cup, but any other international matches, how are they going to prevent this from happening again? Just basically put these people under lock and key?
Yes, and that's a very, very good question. And it's a question that many people are asking, because Iran men's team has qualified for the FIFA World Cup, which is now really only weeks away in your country, in Mexico and Canada. We know that there's been some political jostling at the level of, the Ayatollah and President Trump. President Trump saying they're welcome. Then there being some debate about Iran saying, well, we couldn't possibly go because you invaded us. So all of this is being played out, on the sidelines of a much bigger political story. But the latest I heard was that Iran had asked for all of its matches to be moved to either Canada or Mexico. They've asked FIFA to do that. FIFA has so far rejected that. So it seems like they do still want to come. They do still want some sort of representation on an international stage, but just how that happens remains unknown.
Who is exacting the pressure now with so many of the Iranian leaders having been blown up, per se, from the original time when these women decided to attempt to defect to now? Who would they be under the auspices of? I mean, it just seems kind of weird that you guys got something else to worry about living instead of just worrying so much about these soccer players.
Yeah, that's exactly right. One of the men that I mentioned in that clip that you played at the beginning, his name is Mehdi Taj. He used to be one of the commanders of the Islamic Revolutionary Guards. And, they are the people, basically the unit that pushes out all of the security on behalf of the regime. So he was very senior in that position. When he retired from that position, he became president of the Iran Football Association, and he remains in that position. He's also a vice president of the Asian Football Confederation, so he has inroads into FIFA, the world governing body, because he's the president of football in his country. So he's kind of the link between the regime, international football officials, and the Iran team, and the decisions that will be made. So those decisions will be made as a political decision, not a sports decision. But yeah, we still don't know how that's going to play out.
What can people watching do to possibly assist these young women and other people who maybe think, we don't want to openly encourage defection, but how can we show awareness and support if not just this country? I can imagine any other country where somebody might want to get away. I'm sure you've learned a lot about asylum since you had been covering this.
Yes, well, we have a history of this sort of thing happening. I used to work for the Sydney Organising Committee for the 2000 Olympic Games, and there were many people who defected after they came to compete at those Olympics, and we've had a regular pattern of that. And I know your country has experienced the same sort of thing. I think at the moment the best thing that people can do really is if they see something on social media that is highlighting athletes, wherever they're from, keep them highlighted, like their posts or comment or wish them success. Anything that keeps them in the public eye, particularly in their own country, means there's a little bit less of an incentive for that country to punish them, because they'll just be numbers and statistics. If they're known, if they have a profile, if there's some sort of a global following, then there's some sort of support, and that gives them some sort of strength, and for the regime not to act inappropriately against such people because they know that others are watching. And sometimes it's a small thing to do, but it's a very important thing to do.
You know, it's very hard for people like who live in Australia and people live in America to think people want to get away from their country so bad they're willing to risk everything. So I commend those women for wanting a different life. I know it's really tough because you leave your family at home and put you in danger. It takes a whole lot of heart and strength to actually do that. So I commend them. So what are you going to be doing and following up in this story? Is it pretty much going to be now we just see what happens with the women that are in Australia, or are you still looking to find out more information on the women who returned to Iran?
Both. So I'm definitely going to follow how the women, make their way into the community in Brisbane and playing football, which is their one love that they've brought with them from their country to here. But I'm also definitely going to stay in touch with the people I know who are in touch with the women in Iran, and to try and make sure that, as I mentioned to you, that they are somehow protected just because of the international attention. So we don't want to let up on that. Yeah, we want to keep them kind of in our gaze so that they will be okay.
How are the women here assimilating to freedom? Because I would think the first thing they did is they ripped off the hijab or whatever they were forced to play with. Are they letting their hair fly when they're running around, or are they still wearing it?
No, all of the above that you just mentioned. They went and trained with, the team is called Brisbane Raw, and they were invited in to train with the women's team, and they were there for the first time in just shorts and a short sleeve shirt and their hair flowing and kicking freely and smiling. So it was a nice start.
Well, I'd like to thank you, first of all, because I saw so much of what you were reporting on X, and I'm like, we got to talk to her, because I bet you were, a lot of people won't know, but you're instrumental, and at least you got 2 women saved. You know, it could have been 18, but the other ones went home, but two women found freedom, and I think you had a great deal to do with that, so I salute you for that one.
Barry, thank you so much. Lovely chatting to you.
And before you go, tell everybody how they can find you, the Sports Ambassador. It's a Substack, because even though you're in Australia, you're on X. You can see the handle right there. Where else can people follow up the story with you?
Yeah, they can follow me on Instagram, Facebook, X, Substack. Look for my name, so it's Tracy Lee Holmes, or search the Sports Ambassador, and you'll be able to find it.
Well, thank you, and thank you for the time difference. She's in in case you guys don't know, Tracy is in Australia right now, and I'm in. What time is it right now where you are?
It's not too bad. It's just gone 9 a.m.
Oh, great. I'm glad we didn't have to hit you up in the middle of the night. We got that worked out. Thank you very, very much for your time today.
Thanks, Barry.